Good morning, everybody. We're coming up on 7:30, and we want to get right to a special guest who is joining us live on Fox 29 this morning. Senator Marco Rubio is live in the Capitol Rotunda this morning, and as we say, good morning to you. So good to see you. The last we spoke, Senator Rubio, it was in the midst of a big presidential race. So let's fast forward.
Yeah.
President Trump, what kind of grade do you give him right now in his first few months in office?
Yeah, and that's a difficult thing to assess because, for example, his cabinet has taken forever to get nominated, as my colleagues here on the Democratic side have stalled and delayed every one of his nominees, including the Agriculture Secretary, who's not even controversial, but will not be in place until May because we can't get a vote on it this week before recess. So that said, look, I don't agree with everything the president has done on numerous issues, and I've been clear about that. You never expect to agree with someone on everything. The flip side of it, though, is there is this resistance out there, they call themselves that want to nullify the election. They don't even want to give him a chance to be successful, and they think they're hurting Donald Trump. What they're really hurting is America, because he has a right to be the president. He won the election. He has a right to try to do his job and to put in place the policies he campaigned on. And then in 4 years, there'll be another election, and people can vote for or against him. But this thing that we're going to block everything he stands for, I think is harming America, and it's wrong.
How's your working relationship with him now, Senator Rubio?
Well, it's positive. I want him to be successful, not just because I'm a Republican. I want him to be successful because it's bad for America if our president is not successful. Now, if I disagree on an issue and we've got a good working relationship, I can address that with him, and if it needs to be done publicly, I'll do it that way. That doesn't mean I don't want him to succeed. And unfortunately, there are many people in the Democratic Party right now who, because of a lot of pressure from some of these groups out there, they really can't even cooperate with him, and that's unfortunate.
Senator Rubio, let's move to the matters at hand. Very busy weekend in South Florida with the Superpower Summit. What would you like to see accomplished with President Trump's meeting with the Chinese president?
Well, I hope he'll raise the issues of human rights. China is one of the worst human rights violators in the world. And so I hope that issue comes up. I also hope that they'll raise the issues of China's abuses on territorial claims, for example, geography in the region. It's unfortunate that that hasn't been a higher priority over the last couple of months, but hopefully it will become a priority in that meeting.
You think the president might hold a trade, perhaps the carrot in front of the Chinese president in dealing with the matters with North Korea to put pressure on China to deal with this North Korea issue?
Well, I don't know if trade is part of that. I think it's in China's interest to deal with North Korea. They've got nuclear weapons. They're destabilizing the region. That would have an impact on China if there was a massive migration into China. Ultimately, I do think China needs to do more. But we also need to recognize that at the end of the day, Kim Jong-un in North Korea is not a stable person, and unfortunately has nuclear weapons and long-range missiles.
A brutal week in the foreign policy issues the president and the two presidents can discuss, including Syria and what happened in Syria, the apparent chemical weapons attack. What do you think the U.S. response should be?
Well, first of all, I think we need to make clear once again that Assad cannot remain as the leader of Syria, that as long as Assad is there are going to be radical Syrian, there are going to be radical elements, there are going to be radical Sunni jihadists in the region because he destabilizes Syria. And so that's the first. The second is we need to figure out, and I think there are groups that we can work with that are not jihadists, that are Syrians, by the way, not foreign fighters, who can have a place at the table in a future Syria and serve as an alternative to the Assad, Iran, Putin access that today is committing war crimes and atrocities in Syria.
You know, in 2015, Mr. Trump said that Russia should take over the matters with Syria. Do you think the U.S. needs to get involved and play a stronger role now and deal with Russia directly with Syria?
Well, I don't know about deal directly with Russia. I mean, to the extent that they're willing to be cooperative, I would. But here's the bottom line. Vladimir Putin is going around making ridiculous claims that somehow this wasn't the Syrian regime that did this. This was rebels who had nerve gas and stockpiled, and the airstrike released those. And that's just absurd. The science doesn't add up. It's just an absurd argument. They make it with a straight face, which tells you Vladimir Putin's willingness to lie. I am not very optimistic that we can work with Russia on Syria or on any major topic for that matter.
Big issue for South Florida and a hot topic across the country, sanctuary cities. What do you think should happen with the federal money that goes to these cities?
Well, I've said this before. I mean, federal cities need to comply with federal law. I'm sorry, cities need to comply with federal law, and if they're not, why should they be receiving law enforcement money? Now, luckily, virtually every jurisdiction in Florida does comply. I encourage them to continue to comply. Cities should not be undermining federal law.
And Senator Rubio, finally, our last question deals with the Treasure Coast and something you have dealt with personally, the algae crisis. What do you think of the plans that are being talked about by state lawmakers to use the land south of Lake Okeechobee and then the projects north of the lake that the Army Corps of Engineers has been talking about?
Yeah, I don't have any opinion on the state debate. I can just tell you that the federal money right now is not there. We need to finish the Central Everglades planning process. And after we're done with that, we can re-examine what else there is to do. But right now, it's going to be hard just to get the money for what we already have on the books. We need to focus on that here at the federal level.
Are you going to focus directly on that throughout this year?
Yes, that's going to be one of my top priorities, absolutely.
All right, I know that's good news to folks living along the Treasure Coast and to all of us in this area. Senator Rubio, thank you. Live at the Capitol this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us so early this morning and to catch us up on a lot of major issues dealing with South Florida and the world this morning. We appreciate